Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this installment of the Mapleton Township Council meeting on Wednesday, June the 30th, 2021. When we rescheduled this meeting, I failed to do the right thing because I put it on Marlene's birthday. So today is Councillor Otten's birthday. So happy birthday to Marlene, and welcome to everyone. And I just want to touch base a little bit on the vaccination clinic that we had here in Mapleton today. It was a fantastic turnout. They brought in doses for the registrants, and it was a full registration. And they actually had to go to the Fergus office and get more vaccine today because they had that many people drop in to get a vaccine. So it's really good news to hear that for Mapleton and for all the people that came around. I was told that the first person that came for a vaccination actually lined up this morning at 7:30 a.m., even though we didn't open till 9. So I had a lot of good people out there that wanted to get a vaccination on the walk-in clinic. So as we go on here, we have a big full agenda, and I'm just wondering if there's any declaration of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, just remind everyone to put their phones on mute if you have it, so we don't get any interruptions, and is to remain on mute if you're not speaking. Item number 4 is confirmation of minutes. We have here item number 4.1, a recommendation that the minutes of the Township of Mapleton Council meeting held on May 25th, 2021 be confirmed as circulated in the agenda package. Need a mover, please, and a seconder. Councillor Douglas, Councillor Ottens, thank you. All those in favor? That's carried. And item 4.2, the recommendation that the minutes of the Township of Mapleton Special Council meeting held on June 1st, 2021 be confirmed as circulated in the agenda package. Mover, please. Councillor Craven, seconded by Councillor Martin. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. I don't believe we have any matters arising under the minutes. And then we go to item number 6, which is matter under the Planning Act. That's going to have a public meeting here. This is a public meeting under the Planning Act to hear comments from the public and agencies and to give consideration to an application ZBA 2021-09 for a proposed zoning bylaw amendment. The subject lands are located at 8609 concession 6. The purpose and effect is to rezone the lands to allow a dog breeding kennel. We will at this time now receive information from Clerk Wheeler on statutory requirements. Clerk Wheeler.
Thank you, sir. Staff can confirm the following. The required notice and postings were completed May 26th. Comments from the Wellington County planners and CBO Patty Wright were received and included in the agenda package. The Mapleton planning report prepared by our own Linda Redmond is included in the agenda package, and no concerns or objections were received from Mapleton ratepayers.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. And we'll now hear from planner Linda Redmond, please.
Through you, Your Honor, Linda is just joining us now by phone. She was having trouble with her visual.
All right. We'll just give Linda a second to get in.
She may be muted. I'll ask her to unmute.
Are you there, Linda? Hello,
I'm
Linda.
Here.
All right. We are under the Planning Act and we are waiting for you to speak.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So the application tonight is dealing with a new kennel application. And I'm assuming you've read out the purpose and effect and the location already.
I have, yes.
Good. Okay. So I won't go over that. anyways, the applicants are proposing to repurpose an existing structure that's already located on their property. It's located on the aerial map in figure 1, and it's a 6,300 square foot building. And it's located right smack dab in the middle of their farm buildings. So it's got a good buffer already with those buildings around it. The property is designated prime ag. It's a farm operation currently, and the zoning is agriculture with a natural environment. The natural environment zoning is located far away from where they're proposing this kennel, so it doesn't interfere with that at all. And in terms of the zoning, there is an amending bylaw attached that would put it into a site specific to allow this additional kennel use. My understanding from speaking with the applicant is that this is a breeding kennel for their own personal dogs that they intend to breed for their own purpose, but also that in the future they'd like to work with special needs dogs to breed dogs for special needs organizations. I'm not sure which one it is. Perhaps the applicant can address that. But we have no concerns with the proposal, and we just want to remind them that site plan approval may be required. In this case, the building is existing, so it might not be have to be as in depth. And then, of course, the kennel bylaw would be applicable. Otherwise, we have no concerns with the application.
Thank you, Linda, for that information. Now I see we have Bruce and Jennifer on. Do either of you want to speak to this? You're on mute if you're going to speak. There you go.
Hello?
Hello, go ahead.
There. Yeah, so, yeah, the dogs we're hoping to breed are for an existing kennel that wants to retire. And we're hoping to take over their bloodlines for canine units eventually. But we have to be a licensed canine to take that over. So that's about all. Yeah, the barn is very structural, fairly redone a couple of years ago. It's gonna be redone again. So, but it's, yeah, it's a very nice property. And yeah, we're looking forward to this for sure.
All right, thank you. Are there any comments from those attending through Zoom? Please indicate so and state your name and address for the record. We will first hear from those in support of the zoning amendment, and then we will hear presentations from those opposed. The applicant may respond to any concerns. Is there anybody on this Zoom call now that wishes to speak in support of the application? Anybody on the Zoom call wishing to speak in opposition of this application? All right, are there any questions from members of council to the applicant or to our planner? Councillor Ottens.
Thank you, through you, your worship. This is not related specifically to this application, but given the number of kennel applications we've had in the last while and some concerns from the public about quantities of kennels and perceived notions that they're puppy mills, I wondered if we could receive an annual report to council from the inspector. Just wondering how many kennels there are, if there's any infractions and what's been done about that, just to maybe allay some public concerns about the number of kennels in Mapleton.
Thank you, Councillor Ottens. Mr. Barron.
Yeah, absolutely. Through your worship, we can absolutely do that for council. That's not a problem at all.
Good, thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Craven.
I just wondered, are they, these dog kennels, after we approve them, are they inspected on a regular basis or not?
Who is best to answer that?
Linda
CBO
here,
right?
I think,
We got CBO right
Yes.
here.
perfect, that's what I was gonna suggest.
Thank you.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Davidson. Yes, these kennels are inspected annually and by our staff and by our animal control officer in order to retain their licenses.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from members of council? Councilor Martin?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to piggyback on, I think it's been Councillor Craven that I've piggybacked on in the past about, the number of kennels that we have here locally. And I was honestly probably fully prepared to not support the next application, but honestly, looking at this application, it's probably one of the better ones that we've seen, to be honest, on my since I've been on council. Just given the layout, the buffers, everything's there in place. It really seems like a perfect spot, a perfect location. And just looking at the plans, it looks like a beautiful spot for a kennel. So this is not going to be the one where I stop my support. I know in the past, staff have kind of said, yes, it's fine if you don't want any more kennels, but it's better that we know about them and inspect them and regulate them, and versus putting a cap on, say, having 15 kennels in the township or whatever, right? So it's probably better for the dog that we're aware of them. But I like this application. It looks like a great spot.
Thank you, Councilor Martin. Further questions from members of council? Councilor Craven again?
I agree with Mike, and there is no residence very close to this proposed dog kennel at all. So I'm quite in favor of that.
Thank you, Councilor Craven. Other questions or comments? Planner Redmond, are you able to speak to other communities from your previous experience about numbers of kennels and limitations putting on those?
Through you, Mayor, I'm not actually, because the kennels are regulated through the kennel bylaws in the other jurisdictions, just like Mapleton. So I think a report from the building department is probably the best opportunity to get that information.
All right, thank you. We'll look into that, providing that information to council as well, just to see what other communities are doing. Would all interested persons viewing through Zoom please clearly state their full name, address, and postal code so as to be recorded by the clerk? And we already have the rumps, and no one else spoke. So I will now conclude this public meeting. And thank you for attending this public meeting. So I do have here a recommendation, item 6.1, that planners report regarding ZBA 2021-09, located at Part Lot 3, Concession 7 East, 8609, Concession 6, L&M Rump Farms, Inc., be received for information. And further, that the draft amending bylaw is circulated in the agenda be presented to council for first, second, and third reading. Any further comments or questions from council? And I'm going to throw us something a little different curve here. Anybody opposed? Then that's carried. Thank you.
Through
Mr. Clerk.
through you, Mr. Mayor, did we get a
Sorry,
mover and seconder?
my apologies, a mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Martin and Councillor Ottens. Thank you, Mr. Clerk, for, I did ask you to keep me on my toes, and that's the first one, so perfect. Item number 7 is delegations and matters arising from delegations. We have no delegations at this point, Mr. Clerk.
None tonight, sir.
Thank you. Then we have item number 8.1. We have here the recommendation that the minutes of the Mapleton Chamber of Commerce executive meeting held on the 19th of May 2021 be received for information. Mover and a seconder, and we'll have a discussion. Councillor Douglas moves. Seconder. Councillor Ottens, thank you. Councillor Douglas.
Not sure I really have too much to add to the minutes here. I can take any questions if anyone has any.
Any questions from members of council about this report? All right, anybody opposed? That's carried. So item number 9.1, we have the report for the May month end and year to date for the building department. Recommendation here that the Township of Mapleton Council receive for information Building Department Report BD 2021-07 dated June 15, 2021 regarding the May month end and year to date. Mover, please. Heard by Councillor Craven, Councillor Ottens. CBO Wright.
Thank you, Mayor Davidson. I really have nothing to add. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to field them.
Thank you. Council questions, comments? Councillor Craven?
Yeah, I just have one question. I don't think I've noticed it on any other building reports. Maybe it was there and I didn't notice it. What would be considered as a designated structure?
CBO Wright?
Through you, Mayor. That would be a tent, solar panels, things of that nature that aren't really necessarily permanent structures, or like a manure tank can be an accessory structure. Things like that that aren't really considered like a building where you'd see walls and a roof.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other council members? I just looking at the report, CBO Wright, and year-to-date totals 202. That is up from 124 the previous year and 123 the year before that. You guys have been cooking. Pretty busy.
Yes, Mayor, we have been very busy.
It's good to see that we get all this happening in Mapleton. So any further comments or questions from council members? All right, anybody opposed? And that's carried. Item 9.2, we have the 9.21 with Drayton Elevated Tank Bid Analysis and Award Recommendation. This is a big document. And I believe we have with us Stuart tonight. Mr. Barron, is there someone here to speak to this?
Yeah, I'd like to speak to it first, and if there's any questions from an engineering perspective, Stuart Winchester from SEMA is here and happy to answer any of them.
Certainly, go ahead then, Mr. Barron.
Thank you, Worship. So this is it's an exciting report, but it's bittersweet as well. We were just getting to the point where we needed to come out for tenders, and as everyone knows, COVID hit, and with COVID, commodity prices rose significantly and put a lot of pressure on the materials that we're looking to use for a water tower. Originally, we had budgeted 4.1, which I believe at the time was very reasonable. But as you can see from the attached letters, steel went up, rebar went up considerably. So we're kind of, surprised when the bid came in for the water tower at 6.1. So basically $2 million more just for the tower alone for the elevated tank. So naturally, when something like that occurs, it's beyond the budgeted numbers. We must come back to council and ask for permission for budget variance. So staff, we did our best to try to explain it, to try to find where the increases would be and how it affected us. I'm happy to report that when we asked SEMA, normally an engineering firm takes a percentage of the total cost of the tower. SEMA has agreed to limit their engineering cost to the original $4.1 million as opposed to the 6.1. So we're grateful for that. But regardless, it's not just the cost that worries staff. There's also an excerpt from the MOECC that's basically saying we're teetering on the danger zone when it comes to fire flows. As you've just noticed from Patty's report, we're growing fairly substantially year over year. And it's a fear of ours that if we don't do something with the water tower, the elevated tank, we're going to run out of water pressure at some point. And I do believe that the MOE will get involved. So all that being said, unfortunately, COVID hit, and there is a considerable amount of increase in the price of the elevated tank, which amounts to 77 cents per day per user, which is unfortunate. However, for the safety of the residents, I do believe it's a must. And This is why we're here discussing this today. And like I said, Stuart Winchester from SEMA Plus is here to answer any engineering questions.
For any questions, Stuart, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think Mr. Barron has explained the situation fairly clearly.
Thank you. Council, I'm going to read the record recommendation and then we get into discussion. The recommendation is that the CEO's report CL 2021-06 dated June 15th, 2021 regarding the Drayton elevated tank be received for information, and further that council approve SEMA's recommendation to award contract RFT 2021-05 for the Drayton elevated tank to Landmark Structure Company. And just before we get into questions and comments from council members, I just want to inform you that CEO Barron and myself, we've had meetings with MPP Randy Pettipies, and we've had meetings with MP John Nader about this. This is core infrastructure, and there's no funding out there federally or provincially to assist us at this point in time on core infrastructure. We've looked, they've looked, there's nothing there. They're going to continue this. A letter which is in our agenda today is from MP Nader going to the Prime Minister as well as to the Minister of Infrastructure, Catherine McKenna. And we are working on trying to get a meeting with both the federal and the provincial infrastructure heads so we can discuss situations like this. It may be too late for our water tower, but we certainly have projects in the wastewater still to come. And if we can get some funding for that, we might be able to offset some of the costs of this further down the road. That's the hope. Really, it's a really tough pill to swallow for all of us, and it's going to be really hard for us to pass on these costs to the community. Once again, we just raised our rates, thinking that we had everything covered, and now we come with this COVID wow hit of the costs going way up. Okay, I'll open it up to council members. Councillor Ottens.
Yes, through you, Mayor Davidson. Since big component of needing the water tower is water for fire suppression, would it not be logical to spread the cost amongst all the residents of Mapleton, since we all benefit from the fire department, rather than just putting all the costs on the water users, the urban residents? I say that as a rural resident.
Mr. Barron, or we got the chief here?
I did see the chief. However, I'll take a crack at it, and maybe chief, if you can correct me if I'm wrong. We do have provisions if we're outside of the Drayton area to be able to fight fires. There's reservoirs, there's a tower in Moorfield as well, and there's certain designated ponds that the firefighters can go to fill up for water, and we have one in Alma as well. So I don't think necessarily that if you're on one side of Mapleton coming back to Drayton to that elevated tank to fill is really what we're looking for in this tower or tank. Is that correct?
Mr. Barron?
Yeah.
Yeah, Chief, do you want to comment on that? Do the fire trucks come into town at any time to fill up from our fire hydrants and then go back out to a fire?
Very seldom anymore. Years ago, we had no outside water sources, but now through help with the building department, we have 35 or 36 water sources throughout the township that we go to first. We only would come back to Drayton to a hydrant or to the fire hall if we were really close to town and could make better time than going to the water sources. We have water sources with 40,000 gallons there to use.
Thank you, Chief. That's actually a really good question you had there, Councillor Ottens, and I'm glad you brought that up. And thank you, Chief and CO Barron, for the explanation. Marlene, you got another follow-up?
Not related to that. I do have a second question. Can I ask that right now too?
Let's go ahead.
Would the cost, the cost increase is related to COVID, and so that's very incident specific. And we have found even for our own farm use, lumber went up and then now it's already going down. So theoretically, would the cost of the steel and all these other things be going down in the next few months as the supply demand balances out again, and that it might not be such an onerous increase? And can that be written into the, I guess, the price or
Mr.
the
Winchester?
agreement?
Mr. Winchester, do you have an answer?
Well, through you to Mr. Mayor, it's uncertain as to whether the price of the steel commodity is going to reduce in the near to medium future. We do know that there are some significant infrastructure programs in the US and in China, which are really demanding a lot of steel. So I don't know whether the costs are going to be reduced in in a few months or not. Taking the chance on holding off on this, that there may be a reduction in the price, we would be forced to retender this at a future time to see what is going to occur.
Thank you. So Mr. Winchester, just I think going on Councillor Otten's, can something be written into the contract that if prices drop, that those funds return back to Mapleton? I think that's what Councillor Ottens was
Right,
getting at.
I didn't mean to retender it or to postpone. I meant if the price suddenly drops, could the bid reflect that price accordingly?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we could certainly ask the question. That provision was not included in the original tender document. So that would be, goodwill on the part of Landmark Structures. The problem that I would anticipate foreseeing on this is that due to the volatility in the price of commodities right now, the contractor is going to secure the products as quickly as he can, as soon as he's advised of the award of contract. So he's going to be fixing his prices, tomorrow if we award the contract tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Martin?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, one of my questions was piggybacking on that too. Because, in reading over the correspondence, what is the supply chain correspondence from a couple of different associations, they've talked about a clause similar to that, but specific to this, tender. So on the table one of the budget update, it's got two items, provisional items and cash allowances, and then miscellaneous items and cash allowances totaling just under 800,000. I was kind of assuming, I guess, that maybe that's where it allowed for some fluctuation. But I mean, if they fix their material or the price of their materials almost immediately, then what would those allowances be for then, if not to allow for fluctuations in the market?
Winchester?
The provisional items and the cash allowances that have been incorporated in the total tender price is basically to address potentially unforeseen issues that arise during construction, specifically the provisional items. The cash allowances are for certain works that we do know that need to be undertaken, but at the time of tendering, we weren't aware of what the values were. Specifically, there is going to be costs for Hydro One service connections to the tower and to a bulk water station, as well as upgrades to Mornington Communications network to tie communications from the elevated tank to the water treatment plant. So we carried allowances. Those costs would be paid to the general contractor at the costs invoiced by those two utilities. There is also a contingency allowance that's carried in there, again, as I identified, for unforeseen circumstances that arise. If nothing arises, then those monies will not be spent.
Thank you, sir. Follow up, Mr. Martin?
Yeah, and one last one. This is a complete rookie question for Mr. Winchester too. So technology wise, I know when we went through our process a year or two ago, you know, we looked at a water tower, we looked at a standpipe. You know, is given the cost, you know, obviously it's material costs primarily that are elevating the cost of this particular project. Is there another technology that could get us similar, you know, storage capacity? Would a standpipe do that? Is there something else out there potentially? Or is, you know, your elevated water storage, you're kind of, it's what we've got?
Mr. Winchester?
There are other facility suppliers or vendors that are promoting their products, but typically what we have found is that the composite elevated tank that we are proposing here provides the best long-term service to the owners of the water systems. We've just recently completed an analysis for the Lambton area water supply system, and the long-term cost for an elevated steel tank is life cycle cost is cheaper for the composite elevated tank as we're proposed here.
Thank you. Councillor Craven, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just wondered why about 20 people picked up plans and only one tender came back in. Is there a reason for that? And because of that, should or could we re-tender, hoping that more would tender and maybe do get a better price on it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the construction of composite elevated tanks is a very specialized construction process, and there really are very, very few constructors, even in, well, certainly very few in Canada and very few across North America, actually. A number of the plan takers were suppliers and subcontractors, electrical subcontractors, site civil works contractors that would have provided bids to landmark structures.
Thank you, Mr. Winchester. That answers actually a very good question that Councillor Craven posed there. Councillor Douglas?
Yeah, it's unfortunate we're in the situation we are with timing wise, but I think I'm supportive of moving forward with it as tendered. We've been looking at this for a long time, and I don't want to run the risk of re-tendering later on this year or next year with the uncertainty of what's going to happen. So I'm supportive of moving forward with it, but also want to acknowledge what Mr. Barron said at the beginning about SEMA Plus's fees, working off a percentage of the original. That's a pretty significant savings that I'm sure that SEMA could have taken and ran with. So I just wanted to, reiterate that. But I guess my second comment is that I was just wondering if there's any other funding models or anything else we can do in-house with different reserve funds that we can look at. I'm sure we already have, but to alleviate some of this burden on the water user.
Thank you, Councillor Douglas. And I'm going to turn that to Mr. Morrison to speak to the financial part.
Right now, the rate increases would be taking effect in 2022, and the cost of actually borrowing the money from the Ontario infrastructure is almost as cheap as the internal financing of our own sources of revenue. So the burden on the residential ratepayer currently is not any greater than if we just borrowed the money from ourselves to pay for it. The issue would be that I would be fearful that if we borrow too much money from other reserves, we would not have, we may be compromising our funding of other projects as we're moving forward. So we have to be careful of that as well. I hope that answers your question.
Councillor Douglas, that answer the question you're looking for?
Yeah, that's good.
Thank you. Further comments, questions from council? Yeah, this is a very we all know we've been working hard to work on our water, wastewater, and this unfortunate situation where the prices have skyrocketed have put us into a peculiar situation. I'm with Councillor Douglas, though, that as Mr. Barron had pointed out, we really can't wait. If we don't do something, then at some point in time, the ministry will come in and force us to do it anyway. We won't be as prepared to do it as we are now. And just as part of the conversations we had with MP Nader, we were talking about the Canada Infrastructure Bank as well, how they were open to lend to someone to do the work for us in our P3, but not so much just straight to the municipality. So that's part of the conversation as well that we had with Mr. Nader. Mr. Barron, do you have anything else to add before we go to the vote?
Through your worship, no, I just, you know, I commend council on this, because this is not an easy decision. And although the report was written, I do know that there's a lot of concern, a lot of questions in the background that were posed. There's a great deal of concern for the ratepayers from all of council. So I just want to make sure that the public understands that. It's a situation we're faced with. You know, there's some companies, or there's some folks that have benefited a great deal from things like this. Unfortunately, we're on the other side of that. We have to spend extra to get what we want. So it's a hard decision by council, but I think you guys are on the right track.
Thank you, Mr. Barron. I do have the recommendation here that CAO's report CL 2021-06 dated June 15, 2021 regarding the Drayton elevated tank be received for information, and further that council approves SEMA's recommendation to award contract RFT 2021-05 for the Drayton elevated tank to Landmark Company, Structure Company. I need a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councilor Douglas, second by Councilor Martin. Any further comments or questions from council? Councilor Martin.
Just a quick one, Mr. Mayor, and this is probably going to make Director Morrison reach through and choke me, but is there, given the about the fees specifically, you're right, we can't keep hanging back on this. If Marlene and Dennis can maybe help with my memory, but I want to say this tower, when it was proposed back at the beginning of last term of council, it was sitting like between like $2.5 or $3 million, right? So sitting back has done us no favors. I know there was lots of other, you know, irons in the fire, but specific to the water, to the fees, is there, given that we've had, you know, healthy fee increases the past couple of years, is there a way, given you know, the state of finances, you know, provincially, nationally, that we could push back, say even like 6 months or something to delay the increase? I know the cost recovery on it, you know, that impacts all of that, and John's probably doing percentages in his head right now, but like, is that an ability that we would have, you know, just to try and you know, to help out as far as the users on the system? Or is it, you know, if this thing happens tonight, then the fees need to increase, you know, January 2022.
Morrison, the fees are going to go up January as per your schedule here. Any comments to that question?
The fees are proposed to go up the 1st of January. Some of the fee increases is also taking into account some of the conditional assessments that we've been talking about with respect to our water and wastewater services. Once that has been fully assessed, a master plan developed, then you could probably revisit, you know, the development charges as well to see whether they were properly financed. But the problem is that some of these conditions that may alter the rates is potentially a year from now. So I would be reluctant to not increase the fees somewhat on January the 1st, so that we're not seeing a huge or more significant impact a year from now because we haven't thought about it now. I'm being a little cautious. Some of the fees is being built in a good healthy percentage of some of the increases that we might be expecting from those conditional assessment increases. And we need to start budgeting for that as well, so to keep the system running properly. So the fee increase of 77 cents a day is paying for the water tower, but also going to a long way to address some of the conditional assessments that we've been talking about with you in the last few council meetings. And that the master plan would then map out a more solid plan as to when those expenditures would be built. You could then look at your development charge fees, whether you're recovering enough from the development charge. But there's a lot of work that has to be done. And again, I think this would be safer to increase the fees at this point, because you might not be looking for such a more horrendous fee increase next year in an election year.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Does that answer your question, Councilor Martin? Good. Any other questions? Councilor Craven?
I don't think there's any debate on whether we need this water tower or not. I wake up every morning hoping we don't have a big fire today, that we don't have enough water there to put it out. I think Rick will agree with me on that. And possibly next year, could we space out the increases rather than going the full 77 cents January 1st, spread it out a little more over the next 2 or 3 years?
I think Mr. Craven, Mr. Morrison just answered that question. There's a similar question to Mr. Martin. He was wondering
Yeah,
that. So
yeah,
we'll have that discussion in January.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? All right, I'll call the vote then. Anybody opposed? That is carried then. Thank you. Now we'll move on to item 9.2.2, which is the Green and Inclusive Community Fund building fund. Recommendation here is that CEO's report CL 2021-07 dated June 15, 2021 regarding the Green and Inclusive Community Building Fund be received for information, and further that council approve one of the options presented by staff. So I'm just going to turn this over to Mr. Barron.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the report basically outlines what we've been speaking throughout this entire process. Option one is to essentially stick with what our 10-year capital plan is and try to recoup 80% of that cost, which really doesn't change the building at all. The second option is to work with the community hall, make it a gymnasium, add a second story, add some more rooms. That would potentially take us to a $10 million price tag. The application for that does need to be submitted by July 6th. We are ready to apply. We've done all the studies, and we're waiting on the information and of course the resolution from council to guide us. The third option is looking at a pool, whether it's indoor or outdoor, as well as an arena surface, an additional arena or ice rink. And clearly that adds about another $15 million to the price tag. The first 10 million is funded 80%, and the remainder is funded at 60%. So I guess from a staff perspective, it's always our job to try to offer the best advice. And just given the information that we just went through with the elevated costs and things, I think I guess what I'd like to demonstrate to council is that option one, I think we should take in consideration. Not that we do not want to add a gymnasium and some more rooms, but we've seen how much the increases have affected us on the water tower alone. What if our 10-year capital plan, apart from the PMD, goes up considerably as well? If we do go with option one, that and are approved, of course, that would save us about just over $2 million that we can put in reserves to hedge against any future increases that we're not aware of, much like we just faced in the water tower. That being said, staff will happily and aggressively pursue whatever council chooses, and but we just wanted you to make council to be aware of that, and I'm looking forward to an interesting conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Barron, for that. Because this recommendation, we have to add a piece to it where we'll get a mover and a seconder for it later on. So let's have a conversation about this, Council. Councilor Craven.
I tend to agree with you, Manny. If we apply for it, if we applied for the full $10 million project and didn't get approval for it, this could be a kind of a plan B to go with this instead. Put the 2 million in reserve, and over the next few years, as we wanted to, then make some of the changes to it. What I'm saying is we'll put the money in the account and save it, and then necessarily use it down the road a piece.
Thank you, Councilor Craven.
Through your worship, if I may, I think this is an either or situation, Councilor Craven. I don't know, we likely can't afford or apply for both. I'll have to verify that, though. I'm not sure. But if we do make a decision to go for the 10 million, you know, then I think option 1 is off the table.
But Mr. Barron, if I remember correctly from the application, if we apply for $10 million, they may give us only a portion of that anyway. They might not give us the full 10. They might give us 5 million. Is it possible they'll give us half of what we asked for?
I'd have to, through your worship, I'd have to refamiliarize myself with the actual application.
Okay. Yeah, I can't recall fully. Further comments questions from council? Councilor Douglas?
Yeah, so this has been definitely a interesting exercise going through this with the public meeting and getting all the feedback, but you know, I really like the plan as presented, but I tend to agree with Mr. Barron, going with option 1, you know, especially in light of the previous discussion we just had on the water towers. So like, to me, the pool and the twin ice pad was definitely out. We just couldn't afford that at all, especially with how the structure of the RFP was laid out. So it's between 1 and 2, and I think I'm looking to support option 1 right now.
Thank you, Councilor Ottens.
Yeah, it's definitely a difficult decision. I understand the idea between what Mr. Barron said and the other councillors about option 1 being the more fiscally responsible, I guess, fiscally easier application. I guess a small part of me, or maybe a bigger part of me, looks a little bit at the saying that the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. And I believe that could apply to infrastructure as well. So will we look back and think, man, we should have done that 5, 10, whatever years ago? Because as my husband likes to say, nothing ever gets cheaper. You can't wait, say, oh, it's going to be cheaper later. It won't be, as we've learned from the water tower. It went from 2 to 4 to 6 million in very short time. So if we ever want to upgrade our recreational facilities, and I love this idea, it never crossed my mind to do a multi-court till Paul came up with it, and I thought it was really a good idea. And I'm not a sports person at all, but I see the value in it to have something different and something additional for our residents in the long term going forward. And if we don't do it, if we don't apply for this money now, when will we? Will any of this kind of grants come in the next little while? I can see the governments, after all the COVID spending, they're going to be tightening the belts like crazy after this. And will there be a grant like this available? I don't know. So I'm inclined to go for option 2, to see what we can get, and hope that we get it. And I like to look forward, and I guess the legacy is something that's on my mind. And I think that that would be a good thing for our residents, just to have.
Thank you, Councillor Ottens. Councillor Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, I was pulling up my other screen. You know, I guess I'm conflicted because I agree probably, you know, with everything that's been said so far, right? Like it's like, let's be honest, the plans that Mr. Cudlip and his staff did up essentially overnight are flat out gorgeous. You know, to see the plans, you know, and have a facility like that. You know, I think, you know, it is a project that I think we should look at. You know, my dilemma is I'm not sure if now is the time. You know, there's been you know, an amazing amount of public feedback and discussion around this particular facility. People are interested, and I think people are looking for a greater level of service coming out of that particular facility. You know, you can rest. You know, I'm not going to keep championing the second ice pad in the pool like I've been doing all along. I still think they're great ideas. Obviously, now is not the time. We have no plans in place for any of that. But I'm just not sure that a multi-court gymnasium is what people are looking for either. I'm not sure. Like, and I love the idea, but I'm just not sure that that's what the majority of people would want. And from some of the conversations that I've had or phone calls I've taken on it, you know, people agree that the plans are gorgeous, right? And they want to have a say, and you know, whether it's a pool or otherwise. But I think option one would provide us with that financial flexibility. It addresses our capital needs that we were hoping to complete anyway. But it also, you know, in my mind, you know, gives us time, not just a couple months in response to a grant application, but it gives us the time to determine exactly what we want, what the public wants, what the ratepayer is willing to pay for a facility or the type of facility we have. You know, we can create, if it's a master plans drive me nuts, to be honest, but like create a master plan for that facility. You know, we had a Parks and Rec plan, I think, completed a year or two ago. I couldn't tell you what it looks like, right? Like, I don't know that we discussed it all that much, right? But there's clearly an interest, you know, with recreational programming. We've got a manager now for that. You know, this facility, as it's drawn up, these plans, you know, would assist with that. But I think if we figure out what we want for the facility, we can create some plans. You know, some drawings. You know, we got a great design here. If this is what we choose, we can shove it in a drawer, and the next time you know, grant funding comes out, we've got something that's shovel ready, right? Like, we can look to places like Wellesley, you know, who got a massive grant, successful to that grant, but they were able to demonstrate a need, right? Their arena, you know, was condemned, right? They were operating out of St. Clements, and you know, it's very different than our situation, right? If we have to demonstrate need, which is what this grant process looks for as well, right? So I love the fact that staff brought this forward for us to look at. But I think even if we're successful in option one, it's still going to be one of the very biggest grants that we've been successful with, at least to my recollection. Maybe we've had bigger ones in the past, but 2.2 is nothing to sniff at, right? Like, that's still a big deal. So I just love, you know, the public for the conversation piece on this, and for staff for bringing this kind of vision forward, right? So I think I'll probably be ending up on option one on this, but it's been a phenomenal exercise, and I really hope that if we, you know, regardless of what we choose tonight, if we, you know, end up on option one, that we don't stop the conversation, right? Like, if we want to provide a greater level of service out of this building, then let's keep having the conversation. Let's figure it out. You know, let's spend some money to create some plans and designs, and then we have them when you know, these magical grants, you know, appear and then close a couple weeks later. So that would be my comments.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Ottens.
Thank you. I guess my concern with option one, if we went with that and it's approved and we do the work that was budgeted, would that not just get undone if we decide 5 years down the road to do a whole different revamp of the facility? Then all the money we've just spent on altering the entrance and moving the kitchen and whatever we were talking about in the existing budget, that the money we've already planned on, will that just be money thrown away because we'll be undoing that to do a complete overhaul of the facility because another grant has come up? So I guess that's kind of a concern for me.
Thank you, Councillor Ottens. Councillor Craven?
When this talk about this grant, and what we were going to do, the arena first started, I was very excited and very happy to see us going to do something along the line we were planning. But when the water tower came in at $2 million more than what we had figured, then that's $2 million more that we're going to the Drayton and Moorfield people for. And I'm not too sure that they're going to be able to handle another, maybe as high as 2 million for the arena as well. And I think for that reason, I would be supporting option one.
Mr. Craven, remember that the water tower is out of a different budget than what the arena is, and we're not asking the community to ask for money for the expansion of the arena. We were asking the federal government for funds for that, and we are already in our budget already spending the $2 million. So
Yeah, but don't forget the money all comes out of the same pocket.
for everything, sir, you're absolutely right. But if we don't get it, then another community will. And as Mr. Martin pointed out with Wellesley, they received a large amount of funding, as did a lot of other communities in a previous grant application that we did not apply for. And that's why they are getting these big expensive upgrades to what they're doing. We didn't apply for it in the past. Here's another opportunity for us to apply, as Councillor Ottens pointed out, for something that our community, if we were to try to do this on our own, we would not be able to do. Then it would be fully onto the taxpayers to be able to do that. So there's the dilemma that I see us being in, is that if we don't apply for a big grant at some point in time, as Councillor Ottens pointed out, the opportunities will be less coming in the future, as a lot of money is being poured out now for in the infrastructure. And Councillor Martin brought up the master plan that we approved in 2019. The first master plan, I believe, was 2012. There were a lot of recommendations in 2012 that flowed in again to 2019. And on page 70 of the master plan, it states that new upgrades and new development should be accessible, environmentally friendly, maintain high quality, flexible in terms of space to accommodate different users. And this plan that we have in front of us, and I don't think anybody would argue, this development hits all of those points. And in fact, the Mapleton master plan, the survey they did, respondents were asked which facilities they would support receiving additional public funds to improve or provide additional facilities. And one of the highest levels of support was for multi-sport courts in the Township of Mapleton, like the one we have in front of us. 95% of respondents wanted a multi-sport court, which shows that we are on the right track building or looking at this as a plan. And as noted in Appendix 3, with the baby boomer sector in Mapleton being the highest emerging demographic at 29%, it's even higher than what our youth is, which is at 28%. It would be prudent to ensure that there are ample recreational opportunities for this highest emerging demographic to further the development of drop-in, casual, non-competitive, or unstructured recreational opportunities, having facilities and programming to support the needs of the aging population. And I know with our new recreational programmer that if Amy was given the opportunity, she would have all kinds of plans and ideas to include this group of aging baby boomers in programming at this new facility. And when I look at what is being proposed here and what is available in surrounding communities, which is also noted in the Parks and Recreational Plan, we are creating something that very few have, or could be creating something that very few have, which would mean people from other communities would be coming to Mapleton to get involved. For example, when Mary Ann, my wife, and I played volleyball, we couldn't play it in town. We had to go out of town. We had to go to Listowel and play volleyball. So with a full-time basketball court, only Elora has something like that. Indoor walking tracks, Woolwich, you have CW Sportsplex. You can say Listowel as well, but that's called a running track there. And so you look at this and what we can create here with funding coming out of the federal government that someone's going to get, Mr. Craven and other council members, someone is going to apply for it and someone's going to get it. And if we don't look at the big picture in the township, we will always look at the small picture, then we're not going to be getting anything big. And that's why I liked when I saw this plan. And I know that the plan put forth, or the idea coming forth, and Councillor Douglas was talking about this, it actually comes right out of the master plan that we approved in 2019, multi-court facility. It's right there in the plan. So I understand the idea of applying for the just over $2 million. I get that. But at the end of the day, we can apply for that $2 million, but we will not see a facility like this. And we probably won't see funding like this for some time to do a facility like this. And that's unfortunate. It'd be very unfortunate if we didn't apply for something like this when we have the opportunity to. And although I am concerned about the future cost being associated down the road with the infrastructure, and I understand the idea of that $2 million, saving that $2 million if we were approved for that $2 million. Nothing's saying we're going to get approved for the $2 million. Nothing's going to say we're going to get approved for 10. But if we were to save that $2 million, that would go into some of our core infrastructure, but we wouldn't have a facility that the community can go to and utilize. They're not going to, per se, having a road rebuilt with that extra $2 million isn't going to make everyone happy. Some of the stuff you do underground, they'll never see. It's not what they call sexy, and they're not going to see it. This is something that the community can look at, grab onto, and enjoy. They're not going to enjoy that road as much to save that $2 million. We have funding in place already for all of the infrastructure that that's what we have 10-year plans for. That's what Mr. Morrison's for. And his team, they work at putting these 10-year plans and for all the projects we need to do. And these $2 million, or just over $2 million, are projects that we have currently in place for the PMD arena. So yes, we can just apply for the $2.5 million, or we can go big and look for something a lot larger. And I myself don't want to see other communities getting the $10-15 million projects again, and we're left out in the cold with zero or a very small portion. And I know, Mr. Martin, you pointed out that $2 million might be big, but I would suggest to you that Wellesley and our community are about the same size, and they've got a huge chunk of money. And I think we should be looking for that kind of money. Councillor Ottens.
Oh, sorry, I should have been off, but I'll just turn.
Okay, Councillor Craven, you had another, go ahead.
I'm not totally convinced on option 2 yet, but I don't want to put words in Marlene's mouth, but she might be right in a way that maybe we can't afford not to do this.
Yes, Mr. Craven, I would agree with that. And because if you look at, if we're talking about, just our water tower and the increase we have in 1 year, and Councillor Martin pointed out that the water tower started out around $2.5 million, $2 million just 6-7 years ago. What's to say that doing this facility another 5 years down the road isn't going to be $20 million? We don't know. And to say that, we can save $2 million and it's going to be, and we're looking at, I think Mr. Mattina's got a report coming up showing that the roads right now, the infrastructure we're doing now, we're already $800,000 in the positive because of the tendering process and the prices coming in under budget. So we've already had $800,000 saved there in that tendering. So again, this is an opportunity for us to do something big, even though we know that already $800,000 is saved in doing roads infrastructure. Further comments, questions? Councillor Douglas.
Yeah, just to the point about increasing costs and maybe not being able to afford to do in the future, but if we proceed with option 2 and the cost comes in at $15 million and say we're getting 8 from the government, like we're on the hook for that difference. So what happens then? That's my big concern right now, because there's no guarantees that this thing is going to be $10 million. There's steel and wood and everything else in it as well. So what happens then if there's an overage?
If I remember correctly, Mr. Barron, you can jump in here after, that we could scale back. The plans we're putting forward, as Mr. Barron pointed out in the last committee or council meeting, that we're putting forward a plan that's not, that is still adjustable in the future. Mr. Barron?
Yeah, that's through your worship, correct. And to your point, Councillor Douglas, we anticipated this question as well. So we also asked SEMA to make sure that there's a buffer in the pricing that can be taken into consideration in case prices. So we anticipated both option 1 and option 2 in these questions. So there is, Lawrence has put in a bit of a buffer on the pricing for the 10 million. And also in great deal, we discussed that we must, regardless of the option, but specifically option 2, we must make sure that we are on site constantly to make sure that the 10 million price tag is a 10 million price tag. Sure, there's things that come up, but we've discussed and are going to try to ensure that we don't go over 10 million.
Thank you, Councillor Ottens.
Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate that, yeah, the best and the cheapest time to do any kind of infrastructure project is 5 years ago, right? It's never going to be, unless you have some sort of donation, there's never going to be a cheap time to do a fluff project like this, as someone might think of it. But I do feel it's important that we do it at some point and not wait. But I just wanted to also say, could we have a recorded vote for this particular question?
We can, Councillor Ottens, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Further comments, questions?
Oh, I guess we should maybe make a motion that we choose an option unless somebody else has some more comments.
Councillor Martin has comments, I believe, first.
Okay.
Sorry, yeah, I'll be quick, Marlene. So I agree. We got to learn from decisions we've made in the past or haven't made. I'm terrible for buying something, a Canadian Tire that's 80% off, even if I don't need it. It's a great deal, right? That's kind of really, when it comes down to it, that's really what it comes down to on this project for me. I love the plans. I love how it looks. The design's amazing. I'm just not convinced that's exactly what we need, and this is maybe where I bring out the second ice pad or whatever, right? Like this, it might be, I think we're looking for something. I don't think we have enough information to make that. I don't have enough information. I'm not going to speak for the rest of you to make that real educated decision to commit this kind of money to a project, even though it would be beautiful. And I'm certain if option 1 is selected, I'm certainly not. I don't want these conversations to die. I think we need to keep having them. We need to create something out of that building and at least have it shovel ready. That's really where I come back to on it. But sorry, you can make the motion.
Thanks to Councillor Martin, and I would disagree with you there, sir, about we don't have information. The master plan that we has that information in there when it says that one of the highest levels of support was for a multi-court, and that was 95% of the respondents to the survey was 95% for a multi-court. Councillor Ottens. You're on mute, Councillor Ottens.
Okay. We have to, I suppose, make a motion that we add one of the options to the recommendation at this point.
That's correct.
So I'll make a motion that we approve option 2.
All right, so there's the motion. Now let me read the entire motion of Councillor Ottens is option number 2 on there. that the CEO's report CL 2021-07 dated June 15, 2021 regarding the Green and Inclusive Community Building Fund be received for information, and further that council approve option number 2, which is we follow the plan SEMA Plus has presented. This plan includes converting the existing community hall to a multi-court gymnasium with elevated walking track, new entrance, adding a multi-purpose rooms and an accessible playground, etc. Councillor Ottens has now put that onto the floor. I need a seconder. Councillor Craven, second that. Okay. So now we have that option on the floor. Let's have further discussion. Councillor Martin? No, Councillor
Oh,
Craven?
sorry, I thought we were having a recorded vote, so that's why my
No,
mic's on.
that's, sorry, Councillor Craven, you have comments?
I just want to make one more comment. We're counting a whole lot on spending this much on the water tower and this much on the arena. We're counting a whole lot on our development continuing. And one thing I must say that arena has sat there for pretty near 50 years and hardly a darn thing has ever been done to it except the change rooms. So it's the same old drab building that's been there that long. If we can make some changes to it, some improvements, make it more enticing, then we may stand a better chance of enticing people to come and live in Drayton and our area, and some more businesses to relocate here. We got to attract these people and these businesses somehow or other. This might be a way to do it. Let's just hope it is an expensive way to do it.
Thank you, Councillor Craven. Further comments and questions before we do the recorded vote? Then I'll ask the clerk to do the recorded vote.
Okay. Councillor Ottens,
Yes.
So just so everyone knows, we're doing this option number 2 being going forward with what SEMA Plus has presented. That's what we're voting on. Thank you. I just want to clarify that, Mr. Clerk.
Councillor Craven,
Yes.
Councillor Douglas,
No.
Councillor Martin. Sorry, sir.
Councillor Martin. We didn't hear you, Councillor Martin.
No.
Mayor Davidson.
My vote is a yes.
Thank you.
So council, the vote is 3-2 in favor of going with option number 2 on this one. Thank you, council. It's a good discussion. Moving on, we go to item number 9.2.3. We have a declaration of surplus road. The recommendation here is that Township of Mapleton Council receive clerk's report CL 2021-08 dated June 30th, 2021 regarding the unopened road allowance portion of Catherine Street North in Rossay between Head Street and the unopened portion of Elgin Street. And further that notice of the draft bylaw declaring the unopened road allowance surplus be given in accordance with the disposal of surplus lands policy. And further that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute all ancillary documents pertaining to the sale disposal of the specific street parcel. Mr. Barron.
Through your worship, this would be Mr. Wheeler's.
Sorry, Mr. Wheeler.
Not much further to add. As I mentioned in my report, one of the property owners is cutting the parcel as a backyard. It very much looks like a backyard, and the rest of the other side is a back lane for the other property owner. So it's, as I mentioned, only 2 property owners involved.
Thank you, Mr. Wheeler. Questions, comments from council? Councilor Douglas.
Yep, through your worship, I'm not sure who's best to answer this question, but later on in the agenda, there's a petition for drainage works in the same general vicinity. I'm just wondering if declaring this land surplus in any manner affects how we could deal with that petition for drainage works. Just don't want to, shoot ourselves in the foot here.
Mr. Wheeler.
That would be a question I would be more comfortable asking the engineer once we've delegated an engineer or designated an engineer. It's probably out of my bailiwick.
So, Mr. Wheeler, I think if we get it at this, if we designate this as surplus, we don't have to get rid of it anytime soon. We just have that in our back pocket that we can move it when after this drainage is probably done, correct?
That's a really good point. Actually, if council so desires, I just won't. We can delegate it surplus tonight, and I won't. We don't have to move ahead with the sale until after the tile work.
Thank you, Mr. Wheeler. That's a good question, Councilor Douglas. I had the same one, so I'm glad you brought that up. Because when I saw the two reports, I was same as you. It's this the same area. Councilor Ottens?
Yes, through you, Mayor. Just curious, it says 2 property owners were both interested in purchasing it. So how does that work? Who gets it? Do they like have a bidding war? Like how is it decided who gets it?
Mr. Wheeler?
Thank you for that question. Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's our policy states right down the middle, and they're both happy with that. And just further to Councillor Douglas's point, I suppose on the other hand, as long as we own the road allowance, we could be in for partial payment for the tile drainage system too.
Well, okay then. Any other questions or comments? All right. So I have here that need a mover and a seconder for this recommendation, please. Councilor Douglas, Councilor Ottens. Anybody opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Moving on to item number 9.3.1. We have recommendation here that Township of Mapleton Council receive for information close to home report CTH 2021-02 dated June 15, 2021 regarding the annual reconciliation report, and further that council authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the certification document pertaining to the annual reconciliation report and any ancillary documents. Mover and a seconder, please. Councilor Ottens, Councilor Martin. Do we have someone here to speak to that, Mr. Barron?
Yes, through your worship. It's just almost housekeeping where we have to present this to council to get an approval of what's been happening. We go through this every year. So and basically everything that Helen is doing is above board, and she's doing a great job. And essentially that's it. Just kind of an annual thing that we must do.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Barron. Any comments, questions from council? Councilor Ottens?
Yes, thank you. Me again, asking for, is it possible to get an annual report from this area as well? Just I'm kind of curious how many people participate in this program, what sort of programs are offered, what's well received. I just kind of like to know what our township's doing and how it's all been, how well it works and what isn't working, and how many people we're serving in this particular area. So is that something she could do?
Through your worship, I believe that's an excellent idea, and we'll ask Helen to come to either the July meeting or the August meeting to present that.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Ottens. Other questions or comments on this report? All right, I'll call the question. Anybody opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. Item 9.3.2, declaration of compliance, a recommendation that the Township of Mapleton Council receive for information the close to home report CTH 2021-03 dated June 15, 2021 regarding compliance declaration, Waterloo, Wellington Local Health Integration, and the Township of Mapleton. And further, that council authorize the mayor and the CEO or the director of finance to execute the declaration of and any and or all ancillary documents. Mover, please, and seconder. Councillor Craven, seconded by Councillor Martin. Mr. Barron.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, just kind of housekeeping issue that we must do to satisfy the powers that be.
Thank you, Mr. Barron. Any questions, comments from council? Then I'll call the question. Anybody opposed? That's carried. Next on here, we have item 9.4.1. This is a petition for the drainage works. And the recommendation here, I'm going to have a friendly amendment on this one, I believe, Mr. Clerk. Mr. Clerk, do you want to read the recommendation with the friendly amendment that you need to put in here? Sorry, council, there was a missing piece here to this recommendation.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, we've had advice from our drainage superintendent that he'd like to add a third clause to the recommendation, that is that council appoint Tom Pridham of R.J. Burnside and Associates to be the engineer of record.
Thank you. So the recommendation that Township of Mapleton Council received drainage report PW 2021-08 dated June 15, 2021 regarding a petition for drainage works by owners. Form 1, location Rosse lots 152, 153, 154, and 155. And further, the council of the Township of Mapleton accept the petition and prepare a notice to be sent to the owners requesting drainage and the Grand River Conservation Authority, plus the addition that Clerk Wheeler had just mentioned. Need a mover and a seconder, please, for that full recommendation. Councillor Douglas, seconded by Councillor Martin. And we do have Mr. Hans Decker here, petition organizer. And Mr. Decker, you have some comments you'd like to make?
No, to be honest, I don't know what you've seen a petition, I guess. Like right. I had a little letter that I made for all the neighborhood with it. I don't know if you guys are aware of that.
We have that, sir.
Okay, and then that's all I had to say, really. So if you've no circumstances, then I have nothing else to add.
Thank you. Members of council, questions? Councilor Craven?
Just a comment. I can testify that for several years that problem has existed with that water in those lots, and I'm finally glad to see somebody doing something about it.
Thank you, Councilor Craven. Other comments or questions from members of council? All right, so we have that recommendation with the friendly amendment. I call the question then. Anybody opposed? That is carried, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, sir.
Next up, we have item number 9.42. This is a Public Works Capital Program quarterly update. The Township of Mapleton. The recommendation is the Township of Mapleton Council receive Public Works Report PW 2021-09 dated June 15, 2021 regarding the 2021 Public Works Capital Program quarterly update number 2 for information. I need a mover, please. Councillor Otten, seconded by Councillor Douglas. All right, Mr. Bettina.
Thank you, Mayor Davidson, to council through you. So this report is the second update to the progress of the capital program for 2021. As stated in the report, there's currently 32 projects in the capital program, total value $9.87 million, and that includes $4 million for the water tower. So now it's going to be 11.8. Just to report to council that all tenders now for the 2021 program have been issued. I believe there's still 2 pending closing, which should happen in the next week or so. And many of them have already either been completed or are underway. And as stated in the report, we're looking at this point of a potential positive variance on the $9.8 million of about $800,000. That's not to say that, I mean, that's at a point in time today. That's not to say things can go off the rails. We you know, at this point, everything is progressing well, and that's what we're anticipating. So we're in a good position at this point to report that. The report also contains a few statistical information, facts for council's consideration as well, with regards to who is running the project and who the engineer may be, and also complementary costs spent on engineering costs for each project. So those details are in the report as well. And I'm open to take any questions should council have any. I have silence.
Yes, well done, Sam. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you.
I believe Mayor Davidson seems to be frozen.
If you could just excuse me for a moment, Mr. Barron, I'll check on the mayor.
Thanks.
I'll just say thanks, Sam, for those reports because I find them very useful. It's sometimes we pass the budget and then you just forget about the projects for the year until you happen to drive down that road or whatever. So I find it helpful to know what level these things are at. And yes, they're busy chewing up the road by my house now, not right by my house, but down the road. So it's good to see these things happening.
Thank you.
Just an update, Mr. Barron, the mayor, he's aware that he's dropped off and he's just trying to reconnect.
Well, we're just receiving this report for information. You know, I think we can, you know, if he's going to take a few minutes, I can step in for him and we can just keep moving along due to the clock. So do we have a mover and a seconder on this already?
We do, Councillor Martin. We have moved by Councillor Otten, seconded by Councillor Douglas.
Perfect. Any further conversation on this recommendation to receive the report? All right, and in keeping with the tradition, anyone opposed? All right, so that motion is carried. So then on to item 9.5. I can introduce it, and I'm sure the mayor will be back regarding the Mapleton Summer Camp update. I'll read the recommendation that the Township of Mapleton Council receive Recreation Report 2021-4 dated June 15th, 2021 for information. Do we have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Craven and Councillor Douglas. And Ms. Gross, I'll turn this over to you.
Good evening, councillors. The Recreation Department is very excited to be talking about our very first ever Mapleton Summer Camp program. It has been the response has been overwhelming. It's overwhelmingly positive. We are sitting at about 75% enrollment right now, and that is with some additional spaces we were able to add. Once the document came out from public health from the province for direction on camp, we were able to actually make our pods a little bit larger and accommodate more kids on our busier weeks, which is amazing. We haven't had to turn anyone away from camp. We've been able to accommodate all families. Our staff has been very busy training and getting their activities together and getting things organized and set up for camp. They've completed their high five training, which is training in child development and programs for camps. It's the only training across Ontario that they can be certified that sets a standard. So we are very lucky and happy that we were able to get that training in for our staff and complete it. And we are looking forward to start opening on Monday, the 5th, with both of our pods being full for week 1.
Thank you. I hope, Mr. Martin, you took over for me when I blanked out there.
After your stroke.
I lost internet connectivity for whatever reason. All right, so thank you, Amy, for that. I only got the last portion of it, but I know what you're going to say. I did read the report. And I thank you for the report. Mr. Martin, did you read the recommendation at all for this one yet? You did? Perfect. And you got a mover and a seconder for it? Perfect. Okay, I don't have to worry about that. So let's have a discussion then. Any comments or questions from council members? All right. Anybody opposed? That's carried. Then we'll move on to item 9.5.2, the after school program. And this is a recommendation that the Township of Mapleton Council receive Recreation Report 2021-05 dated June 15, 2021 regarding Mapleton's after school programs. And further, that council approves the operation of an after school program operated by the Township Recreation Department. And further, that council approves the agreement between the Upper Grand District School Board and the Township of Mapleton, and hereby authorizes the mayor and the CEO to execute the said agreement. And further, that council approves the hiring of program staff. Need a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Ottens. Thank you. Amy, back to you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor and councillors, we have completed, as directed by council, the RFP to the school board, and it has been approved on their end. So we are looking to you for approval to operate this after-school program from Drayton Heights Public School to start in September of 2021 and operate for the next few school years there at this time. So we are excited that it was well received and noted through our surveys that the families are looking for this program, and we were very excited to see that the school board did approve our application. So if anyone has any questions, just let me know.
Amy, do you want to speak to the financing part before we go to council?
Yes. So after looking at the finance portion of the program, I'm confident that we'll be able to operate this program at a cost neutral basis. The program will pay for itself. So we should not have any issues in that sense.
Thank you. Questions, comments from members of council then? Councillor Ottens.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Davidson. How easy is this to add programming then to say Moorfield or Alma School? Is that something that automatically happens once the first school in a municipality is established?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Marlene. We would need to do a second application next year or whenever council would decide to add an additional school. Once we could look at the success of the first program, then we would be able to see how we could go on to the next one.
Okay. And
you have a follow-up? Go ahead.
Sort of. It's cost neutral, which is amazing. Is there some sort of opportunity for low income families? Because obviously the cost is based on families paying fees. So what about low income families who can't afford the fees but need the service?
Amy?
Through you to Councillor Ottens. One of the credentials of the program is that we enter into an agreement with Wellington County for fee subsidies. So we have already been approved by the county for that, should we choose to operate this program. So families will have the opportunity to apply for those fee subsidies through the county.
Okay, great, thank you.
That was approved last month, Councillor Ottens, through the county to help out our program here in the Township of Mapleton. Councillor Craven?
This is only grade 6, up to grade 6 is eligible for this. Is that right, Amy?
Yes, so it would be JK through grade 6. So they're about 12 by the time they're in grade 6, 11.
After that age, they can stay at home by themselves.
Correct.
All right, thank you, Councillor Martin.
Sorry, just flicking screens. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess a couple comments. I like the idea. of this program, philosophically. I think my biggest concerns still are that it's going to remain cost neutral. And then it's already been spoken about, consistent service level across the municipality, right? So I think it's really important that it stays cost neutral. And I think I'd like to see, if I'm going to support it, I'd like to see, that we confirm that with annual reports, right? Like it would have been nice to see like a fully costed business plan, including all the expected expenses that, are listed within the agreement, Article 3, Article 4.4, right? It lays out a whole bunch of expenses that will be, the operator is going to be expected to incur, right? Insurances, liability insurance. And I think it's important that we, while we may carry them already, we need to allocate a specific or a portion of that to this program, right? And, attachment 3, isn't quite detailed enough for me to really make me super comfortable that it's going to run revenue neutral. So, hopefully we can, if this, maybe we can include this in the resolution that, some annual reports come out of this, this program, because, I think it's obvious, it's been clear that there's a demand locally for it. But, if someone could have made a go at this initiative, then the private sector would already be doing this, right? So my concern is that, if the municipality takes this over, the ratepayer might be end up subsidizing this. So, and then to that point about the finances still, I know I've talked about this before, but, the in-kind supports, right? It lists, depending on what staff get hired, the agreement lists that, it requires that at least one qualified adult's on site on time. So that may end up being the rec manager, depending on what type of people get hired. But then also, like whether it's the CAO time, director of finance, payroll, all those people are going to have input into this program. And, I think when we budget annually for like pothole repairs, we budget right down to essentially the air the employee breathes while they're performing the work, right? So I really hope that we see that type of transparency shown to this particular program too, despite, as much as we want it, I think we got to make really sure that that it is revenue neutral. It's a 3-year term that's listed, right? So, I'd really like to see, by the end of that 3-year term, this program gets extended across the municipality. I think at that point, if it's offered across to Alma, Moorfield, Drayton, I think we could look at, maybe having some, municipal subsidization or whatever on top of it if we need to, right? Because then it's an opportunity for everybody across the township would have opportunities to attend these schools. Whether they choose not to or not is a different story. But I think it's important that we at least investigate and see what level of interest there would be, in those other 2 towns as well, right? So, I'd love to see that included in this resolution. I fully respect that a new council can change the resolution or things can change, but I think, if we could have, some reports to make sure that, the revenue neutral, it stays that way, and that, we can continue to, or that we can explore opportunities with the school board for the other 2 facilities. I think it would be something that I think could be good for the entire municipality. So that would be my comment.
Thank you, Councilor Martin. And I don't disagree with you. I think the start of doing the school with the most children, the start of the Drayton School, is not to say that we don't need it in Moorfield or don't need it elsewhere, but we have to start somewhere. And I think the first start of the largest population school would be the one to start at, to see if we can actually make a go of this and keep it at not taxpayers being on the hook for additional charges. And I note that in Amy's report, and I know you wanted a more inclusive business plan, but I'm just looking at the pie chart and the report here, Amy, and you have here, it would leave approximately $1,014.04 per week of additional program operating costs. For running this, how many weeks in the school year are there that you'll be operating this? And is that $1,000 extra per week enough to cover any of the extra costs that Mr. Martin has brought up as might be coming forward?
Right. So I do believe, and I can put together some more numbers for Councillor Martin, that that would be enough and to cover those additional costs. And part of the reason that I was hoping to have the additional funds was so that we could allocate them to grow the program to another school, such as Maryborough Public School or Alma, wherever it would be desired to run and would be able to operate.
Thank you. Mr. Martin, I know you would want to look at adding it to the resolution. I'm not sure that we actually need that. I'm thinking you're down the road, you're worried that another council wouldn't get the same reports. That's why you want to have it as part of the resolution. Because I know if we asked, as Councillor Otten has asked for other reports, the CAO has made sure that we got those reports coming forward to us, and that's why we see them now. And they're not part of any resolution. So do you want it part of the resolution, Councillor Martin? Or do you want to just leave it as is for now, and that CAO Barron will make sure that those reports come so we have an idea what's happening?
Yeah, no, I'm not particularly worried about, future councils. I'm worried about me. So like, as long as, if it's included in the minutes, that's fine, right? Just as long as everybody's on the same page, I think that would be fine with me. I'm not trying to second guess, Amy, your opinion or anything on it. It's just, it's a new initiative for us, right? And, clearly, the reason it may be financially viable or doable or cost neutral is because of the county's participation in it, right? Which maybe a private sector company or person may not have access to, right? So, I understand all that, but, as long as we're on the same page is kind of, how we want to, the oversight we want, and unless I'm way out here, if no one else agrees with me, I'm simply one vote, one voice. I'm fine with that too.
I don't think, Councillor Martin, it's out of the question to ask Amy to provide council with updates on how it's going once we get going. I think it's very important that council knows how this is running, and if the costs are still staying around the $1,000 extra per week, because that's, if you look at the number of school weeks in a year, 1,000 extra per week for the school year is a good startup for another program in another school. And that's what Amy has pointed out. And as for the county, Councillor Martin, fee subsidies are offered to a lot of programs throughout the county that offer similar ones, whether it be a private or public. Just because we know that right across the county there are people that are in need of support when it comes to childcare. Further questions or comments? All right, seeing none, I'll call the question. Is there anybody opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. Moving on down to item number 10. We have a recommendation here that the bylaw is numbered 2021-040, being a bylaw to levy the cost of work undertaken on the municipal drain within the Township of Mapleton in 2020, and 2021-041 being a bylaw to levy the cost of work undertaken on the John Rennie municipal drain within the Township of Mapleton in 2020, and bylaw number 2021-042 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 2010-080 being a zoning bylaw for the Township of Mapleton, be hereby read a first, second, and third time and passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, and sealed with a corporate seal. Any questions on that? I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Otten, seconded by Councillor Craven. Any questions, comments from council? Anybody opposed? That's carried. Thank you. I don't believe we have any correspondence for council's direction. We do have a number of items here, correspondence for council's information. Anybody wish to speak to any of those? There, Mr. Martin. Councillor Martin, you're going to speak to one of those or no? No?
Yep, sorry. I thought I
Okay.
was I thought I was unmuted. The 12.9, the Crime Stoppers, their the informant newsletter. You know, it kind of trying to pull it up here quick. You know, I think this one kind of, I'm not sure if Councillor Craven is still in the Crime Stoppers or not, but you know, I was just wondering if he might happen to know. Sorry, I'm not looking in the camera. Would happen to know what this, you know, the initiative about human trafficking and sexual assault initiative is. It seems really interesting. It's a two-year awareness program initiative that's been happening or is happening. You know, I think, you know, it's a big deal, right? It clearly seems to be something that's present in our community, you know, including sexual assault. You know, it's, you know, we saw a case up there with our Palmerston resident just this spring, you know, with like 20 plus counts over 20 years. You know, I think a program like this is amazing. You know, does Councillor Craven have any more, you know, information on what that initiative looks like? And is there something I could do or we could do to support it more?
Yeah,
Councillor Craven?
our coordinator has been doing seminars for at least a year now to different groups and so on. And human trafficking is definitely here. There's no question about it. I remember the first hint I had of it was when past CEO Brad McRoberts was telling me that a couple of kids that lived fairly close to him all of a sudden went missing, and they suspected human trafficking on those. And I think the one was definitely involved in human trafficking. So it's here, and we've been trying to educate the public and some groups that Sarah deals with on the aspect of it and what to look for in your kids if it's happening, because it can be happening and the kids could still be living at home still, but they can be offered drugs sort of thing, and before they get taken away, the parents could maybe notice different changes in their habits and so on and so forth.
Councillor Martin, maybe we can have the coordinator of Crime Stoppers come and do a little session for us so we understand what's going on.
Absolutely, she could and would.
Yep. I think that'd be a good idea. Mr. Clerk, if we can invite her to come and do a report to council on Crime Stoppers, in particular with the human trafficking, but on other initiatives that Crime Stoppers has that we might be of interest. Thank you, Ms. Martin, for putting that up there. Other items brought back up or to bring up from these? Councilor Ottens?
Just curious, how does the Wellington County report on intensification adjustments? How does that affect Mapleton, if at all?
Well, the county is, of course, identification. The intensification from the province is for 20%. The county does not feel that they can reach that 20%, so they're going to ask the province to go to a 15%. Those talks that we've had, Mr. Barron has been in discussions. Our planning department here has been in discussions with the county. We're looking at what our growth will be here in the Mapleton. We just had a public meeting on this on Monday with the county, and I voiced my concerns at that public meeting because for the next 30 years, the township basically is given about less than 1% growth. So we're going to have, according to what is in the plan, a very small amount of a population growth, which is very concerning, being that we have to, support our infrastructure with the tax money that we get from people that live here and our properties. And if we don't have some kind of growth, then we're going to be in a very tough financial situation, or we're going to have very, very high taxes to offset what growth we're not going to get. The municipalities all around us, Wellington North, Minto, and Centre Wellington, are all going to get quite a bit of that growth. And for some reason, the county, in their plan for the official plan of the county, is not providing us much growth at all. In fact, we're down there with Pushlich, who has the green belt and really can't grow much, with Guelph Aramasa, who really they can't grow anywhere except for Rockwood, and it's almost that capacity now. You know, we sat as council and staff, and we did that whole session where we looked at our municipal boundaries and to expand them and where can we grow and look at that. And I believe, Mr. Barron, that was brought to the county and they saw that. And we're still on the allocations. It's not finalized yet. I'm working with, Mr. Barron and staff are working with the county. I'm working with the other council members because county has to approve whatever growth plan is put in place. And it has to go to province to also get a final approval. So Mr. Barron, you want to add to that?
Yes, thank you, through your worship. Absolutely. So we've, with Linda, Michelle, Larry, and myself, we've been working hard to try to get, make sense of the report. And Linda will present something to council in July meeting for adoption and for support that we can send back to the county. We do feel that the growth that's allocated to Mapleton is low. However, I do believe it's also an opportunity for us to shine and prove them wrong. And I mean that with all due respect to the county, of course. But just given the growth numbers that you've seen with Patty's report, I think we can blow those numbers out of the water. And the next time this OP review comes, whether it's 5, 6, 7 years or so into the future, we'll give them a reason to take a better look at Mapleton and allocate more growth to us. But you will see in detail. Linda will present to council in July exactly what we've been through in the last few months.
And it is a tough goal for us, although that other communities who are slated to grow quite a bit. I know that Mayor Lennox in Wellington North, he made some comments regarding with growth comes growth pains, because it also comes with that infrastructure and other needs. And Center Wellington the same, and there was some public on there from Center Wellington who were concerned about the amount of growth that Center Wellington was going to get. And I know I've had conversations, and I actually said it on the call on Monday, that if some of these communities don't want to grow to that extent, that maybe we can have a conversation of some of their allocation coming to our direction. And that is something that we can work with them if they so want to provide us some of their allocation, then we will actually work with that. But at the meantime, we're still working at the county level. There's that 5% that the county is trying to cut out. And I know there was one developer that came on, and he spoke about Mapleton, and he spoke about how, this is a community that can grow if it was just allowed to grow. And we're not talking exponential growth. We don't want to be, surpassing Center Wellington at any rate. But to have, say, 3,000 people over 30 years, 100 people a year, is a very low number for growth, and it's very low number for us to swallow when it comes to trying to provide for this community with very little finances to do that. And I know this is something that we're talking about. What can we do? What can we build here? What's about our roads and all the rest? But if we don't have that financing, it's a tough goal for us, and it will be for many years down the road. And that's why we have to continue these conversations to try to get that allocation for more than what we're beginning so far. Mr. Wheel, you have anything to add to that? You were involved in those conversations?
Not at all. I just reiterate what CAO Barron said, and that's it's an opportunity to shine and also, of course, the difference the province has said at this time, it's they're setting minimum growth rates, not maximum. So there's plenty of opportunity.
All right. Thank you, Marlene, for bringing that up.
Mayor?
I'm sorry, who are you?
Mayor? It's Linda.
Linda, yes, go ahead, Linda, sorry.
Sorry to interrupt. I can't
No, go ahead.
raise my hand. I just wanted to chime in about this actual letter from the county. What this is doing, lowering the intensification rate from 20% to 15% is actually probably a good thing for Mapleton, because what it's doing is it's only establishing a rate of growth that has to occur within the built up areas. So that's what they call the built boundary. So that's the areas that are already built they're not the greenfield areas or the lands on the outskirts of town, but rather right in town where development has already occurred. So what this is doing is it's saying the official plan requires that 20% of the growth must occur within the built up areas. So that means intensification. That means building second units. That means, you know, apartments, what have you. And that's hard to achieve. It's very hard to achieve. And the reason Mapleton's having a difficult time achieving it is because there are a lot of constraints. In the downtown area of Drayton, for instance, you've got the river, there's hazard lands. So there's the opportunities to intensify those lands it's there, but it's difficult. So what this is doing is it's saying, it's asking the province to allow the county to lower that percentage. Instead of having 20% intensification or 20% new growth in the built up areas, can we have reduce it to 15% and let the remaining growth occur in the greenfield areas, in the areas that are undeveloped. So that's actually helpful to Mapleton. So it's something I think Mapleton might want to think about supporting.
Thank you, Linda, for that clarification of what that 15% means compared to the. I still go on record though, giving us 1% growth over 30 years is not really sufficient.
Right. No, that's another layer to this whole growth plan. And as the CAO had mentioned, we are working on that, and it will be coming back to you to council soon with more explanation.
Perfect. Thank you. Anything further from council then on these pieces? No. All right. Then we'll go down to item number 13, which is notices of motion. We do have two notices of motion today. One that we have in front of us from Councillor Douglas. And then we have a secondary one from Councillor Craven. And both of these will go forward to the next council meeting. I just want to find, I know you, council, you have that one in front of you for Councillor Douglas's notice of motion. The other one for Councillor Craven would be a motion that he's going to give verbally right now. Councillor Craven, go ahead with that.
I've been contacted by a few in Alma, and I know there's an awful lot of opposition to the Highway 6 bypass going through there. And they have pictures they've shown me already of the increased traffic, especially trucks. And with the safety of the kids, especially crossing 17 to go to school, and the seniors crossing 17 from Nesbitt subdivision to go to Alma Park, they're just concerned about the extra traffic because of it. And then some of them realize that it may not be much hope of changing it, but they wonder if they can look at an alternate thing to going up County Road 7 and across 17 to Highway 6 from Fergus.
So what's your motion, Councillor Craven, is what? That Mapleton Council do what?
Mapleton Council object to the bypass for Highway 6 going through County Road 7 and 17 to Alma.
Thank you, Councillor Craven. So those two motions will come for our July meeting then for discussion. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got a third. I'll do a verbal as well.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Martin.
I will send the clerk and yourself a copy momentarily here. The notice of motion being that the Township of Mapleton explore alternative methods of voting for the next municipal election, and further that staff prepare a report for council.
Mr. Martin, you were a little muffled there. Can you do that again, please?
The notice of motion will be that the Township of Mapleton explore alternative methods of voting for the next municipal election, and further that staff prepare a report for council.
Thank you. Mr. Wheeler, you got that? And then that'll come forward from Mr. Martin. You'll send an email.
That's fine. I've got that. Thank you very much.
Mr. Wheeler, just on that motion from Mr. Martin, I know the election is some time away, just it's over a year. Is there a specific time where we have to, I know I've seen other councils already saying what they're going to do for next term for the next election. Is there a time limit that we have on this, that we have to have this through by?
Great.
I just don't want to make sure it's passed already, that we're not going to just spin wheels here.
No, we're in good shape. We of course have a standing bylaw in place that says we vote by mail and we use tabulator until council decides otherwise. And to decide otherwise, we would have to do so by May 1st of 2022.
All right, thank you. We have plenty of time then. Thank you, Councilor Martin. So we have 3 notices of motion for next council meeting. Any other notices of motion? All right, so we have 3 notices of motions for next council meeting. Notice of provision is there, and item number 14. Number 15, other business. Anybody have other business? All right, then we'll go to, we don't have a closed session today. So a confirmatory bylaw. The recommendation that bylaw number 2021-043 being a bylaw to confirm all actions and proceedings of the council of the corporation of the Township of Mapleton be hereby read a first, second, and third time, signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with a corporate seal. I need a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Martin, Councillor Ottens, second it. Anybody opposed? That's carried. And now we are adjourned. Thank you everyone for attending the council meeting and enjoy Canada Day.